Stephanie, thanks so much for being here with us. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. I'm really excited to learn more from you about sales enablement.
Yeah, happy to
Great,
happy to be here.
great. So let's jump straight into it. One of the evergreen topics of sales director is keeping their sales reps highly motivated. Today, with a lot of uncertainty around us and all those events that keep popping up, it's not an easy task.
Yep.
How can sales enablement help to address this challenge?
Yeah. I think one of the key things that enablement can come in and do automatically is just ask a sales leader, a sales director, like, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And then what are you noticing from the team in particular that maybe they need a little bit more help with? So if your goal is to continue to grow by, I don't know, 3x or 4x or whatever, kind of the goal is, even in this economy and kind of the situation where everybody finds themselves in, then we can go back to the sales leader and say, okay, how is your pipeline generation looking? Well, it's not looking so great. Okay, perfect. Then enablement can come in and kind of start diving into, is it a leads problem? Is it a qualification problem? Is it a discovery problem? Like, identifying kind of that point to where everything is maybe not, meshing together the way that it should be, and then really creating a program around that in order to help. Is it that the reps don't understand? Is that they need maybe some up leveling with their skills? And then what I personally enjoy kind of doing from this perspective is identifying members of the team that are doing it really, really well already, and then highlighting them and their best practices to the rest of the team. So I think this can really help reps stay motivated overall, because now they're learning from a peer. They're seeing that these items, these best practices are actually in practice and working. So all of these things it's no longer just kind of the like, well, do this because I said so. It's do this because we see that it's working. Like, this is fantastic. So identifying that is a really great way to kind of like help keep reps motivated, and especially just kind of their eye focused on, whatever the end goal is in a somewhat tumultuous kind of environment right now.
Great. So what you're saying is like discover the real issue, not just have it, oh, low motivation, let's just do some integration or a party or something. No, nail the
Exactly.
problem and then like create a solution around the real problem and show the good examples that are already in a team with the guys that are highly motivated.
Exactly.
Okay, so you work with a lot of customers on day-to-day basis. What are some typical mistakes that you see in terms of managing the long-term motivation?
For sales reps in particular.
Yeah, yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed is that usually we don't dig deep enough into what is the root of the problem. I've had leadership come to me before and say, our sales reps are begging for a methodology. And I'm like, well, that's never the case. Like, what? Sales rep never wants to do more process. So you kind of have to take it on yourself to ask those deeper questions. When did this come up? Who are you hearing it from specifically? What is kind of the conversation that's happening around this? When you drill into it a little bit deeper, the methodology conversation as an example, we found out that the reps just weren't familiar with the current processes. Things were changing too quickly. They didn't have enough information around kind of all of the change management that was happening. So it's not that they wanted more process, even though, like, me from an enablement perspective, like, I mean, I'll give you a methodology if you want a methodology. At the end of the day, they just needed help to understand, why am I being asked to do this? Why are there these fields? What are these questions? What's happening? So the change management is really what kind of came about from that. It's not that they wanted more, it's that they needed more information kind of at the beginning. So I would say being sure not to like quickly jump to judgment or assessment of like, yeah, not a problem, I can fix that. And then you roll out an initiative or something that is maybe just a band-aid, and then the root of the problem is still kind of there under the surface, just festering a little bit. So drilling in, asking more questions. I always kind of apologize up front. Like, I'm going to ask you a bunch of really annoying questions, but I promise you it's for a reason. And then you drill into like the ultimate kind of like, that's what we need to solve for. And then all of the trickle down effects will happen.
Yeah, and what you're saying is crazy important because like sales leaders, sales managers usually are the ones that did the job right and they tend to jump into solutions right away. Oh, you get a problem, I
Yes.
got 3 ways you can fix it right away.
Yes.
And then what you're saying, your role is to dig deeper, be a little bit
Yep.
annoying with the questions, get into the root, and then like help with the solution. But it's like, the last point of the process that you just mentioned. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's great. You mentioned one more crazy important thing, the fast-paced changes.
Yes.
It's like a really struggle keeping up to date new employees and even current employees with business objectives and major developments, new products, especially when you work in a hybrid workforce. Do you have any tips on how to ensure that new joiners and established team members get the same level of information so that they do not scream for process or like do not like
Yeah.
are hurt from lack of information?
Yeah, really good question. One of the things that I like to advocate for, and that I'm actually in the process of looking into doing, like here internally at my current role, is consolidating all of the information and noise that comes out to your team. So whether they're brand new, they're already overwhelmed, or whether they're existing, probably still overwhelmed quite a bit, you're able to consolidate that all through one team in particular, then the teams understand and they know, like, okay, I have to look out for this newsletter or this kind of video or whatever kind of method of communication you've got. And then for any new hires that start after the fact, creating some kind of library of content that they can go back and kind of reference all of that material, or even existing reps. If they're just like, I remember that Stephanie said this one thing about this product update, but I don't remember what it was or when it happened or whatever, they can go back and kind of search for it. So streamlining communications from every department that is trying to get the attention of your customer facing teams, hugely, hugely important in order to make sure that they retain it, that they are focused, that they can actually get the information that they need kind of across to them.
Yeah, and what you mentioned, like cutting the noise, because actually, when they're trying to do their job, they're talking to customers, not to internal people. And like, this is crazy important for them to still pay attention to all those
Yeah.
information and updates, to be really, really like nail down what is important to them, not just, get all the information at once.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I would love to talk about one more thing, which is actually learning and skill development in sales departments.
Yeah.
For motivation, it's known that it's a good tool, like to help build and develop salespeople. But actually, we did a survey that here in Poland, you may believe it or not, that many companies still only have one training a year for a sales team. So I
Wow.
wanted to ask, in your opinion, what is the role of training, like the constant training, the
Yeah.
plan for training and overall motivation and success of a sales team?
Yeah. I think a lot of times when people think of training, or even sales leaders are like, we need a training on this or something like that, they imagine this large kind of thing that's going to take the reps off of the floor, off the phones for an entire day, a week, or something. Like they imagine kind of this really large initiative or program or rollout. And while those can be incredibly impactful and incredibly useful, more often than not, especially in the environment we find ourselves in, we've got TikTok, we've got Instagram, we've got all these social kind of channels that serve up information in these bite-sized chunks. We really should think about learning in a very similar kind of way of, how do I kind of just drop information on you throughout so that it's not a heavy lift for me as kind of the enablement person, or a heavy lift for my learner at the end of the day too. Now they're absorbing information in a very similar way that they absorb information in their personal lives, and it's easier for them to kind of digest it and then like recall it at the end of the day. So you can kind of reinforce those little nuggets of like, hey, remember when like last week we were talking about this quick win or whatever it might be. That's a really crucial part. So I would say challenge your thinking as far as what training actually is or has been in the past, and think through, is there a better way that we can maybe deliver this or inform our teams around what's going on, and get a little bit creative with your approaches depending on the information and the type of sales teams that you've got.
And this is something that typically like sales enablement teams can do for the sales team. Is it like you can come up with those solutions, like to try to tweak it? Because normally in Poland, it's still a situation when HR plays a huge role in
Mhm.
buying and organizing all those trainings. How it is in your market?
Yeah. So usually when HR L&D kind of comes in, a lot of times it's kind of high, what I would consider like high level kind of skill development. How do you time manage? How do you, whatever kind of the topic might be. Enablement, especially sales enablement in particular, can come in and say, okay, so we need to, if time management is maybe one of those things, how do we use time management in order to get you to your quota faster and achieve the results that your sales director actually wants? So it's taking that larger topic and pointing it and focusing it to a specific outcome or behavior that we want to change, and then applying that kind of to it in some assessment form in order to kind of get where you need to go. So I would say work with, if you're in enablement, work with your HR and your L&D kind of business partners to say, what are you working on? What can we leverage? And then how can I maybe take that and spin it for a different angle to where the reps can understand how this would actually apply to their everyday lives? So I would say like, don't discount like the differences, like partner with each other to see like work smarter, not harder at the end of the day.
Great. Thanks so much. It's a really nice perspective. And I'm looking forward to see this change, actually a collaboration and creating those bite-sized content, because there are a lot of things that micro learning is not a new buzzword, but I believe that embracing it is a
Yeah.
really hard task. Like instead of doing 6 hours of training, try to do a 30-second training, right?
Yeah,
That's a tough one.
it
Okay,
is.
Stephanie, and just to wrap up, what would be the advice that you could share with our leaders here in Poland, who want to nail the sales enablement, who want to start doing it? What could
Yeah.
you share?
Yeah, there's a lot of great content on the internet. So if you literally type in what is sales enablement or how to do sales enablement effectively, you will come up with a number of different communities and blog posts and everything. Enablement is such a hot topic right now, and there's so much information. It's still kind of a young profession overall. So, and ultimately, I think enablement will look a little bit different for every single company. So take as much, like absorb as much information as you possibly can, from either like reading or watching webinars or having discussions with other enablement professionals, that are doing things really successfully, and then figure out what makes the most sense for your organization, what you need support and help with, and define that really clearly. That way, when you do bring on an enablement professional, they can hit the ground running and know exactly what the key metrics that you want to change are. That's what I would say is there's so much information. Just be a sponge and absorb as much of it as you possibly can.
Great. And from what we're talking, don't like lay on the quick solution, dig deeper to
Exactly.
understand the problem, to make sure that your
Exactly.
solutions are correct.
Yep.
Thanks
Absolutely.
so much. Thanks so much for today. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise.
Yeah.
If people want to find you and learn more about you, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn for sure. My name is like here at the bottom. So reach out to me on LinkedIn if you ever want to have a conversation. I'm always happy to. So, and then one of the other pieces that I'll plug is I co-founded a enablement community that's run on Slack called the Enablement Squad. That's a great area. We've got over 1,700 members kind of across the globe. So if you're a leader looking to learn more, if you're somebody who wants to maybe like look into getting into sales enablement, if you're already in enablement, find us. You can just Google the Enablement Squad. You can find our website and join our Slack community from there.
Great. I think it's a great place to start. And thanks again. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks.